Bleach Bros Podcast is proud to align itself with Jerky Pro, a beef jerky manufacturer established by military and paramilitary veterans.
Available in 3-ounce or 1-pound bags with great flavors such as honey glazed, teriyaki, red hot, apple cinnamon, original, peppered, sweet barbecue, and if you're ballsy enough, nuclear.
Be sure to use our promo code to get some of the best jerky on the market. Use Bleach Bros 5, all lowercase, to take advantage of this offer today. Hey everybody, this is B-Word of the Bleach Brothers Podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I want to bring your attention to our Linktree. Please visit Linktree/Bleach Bros Podcast for the links to all of our socials, streaming sites, and merch. Linktree is linktr.ee/Bleach Bros Podcast, all one word. If you enjoy our content, make sure to give us a like and give us a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Also, invite your friends. And with that, let's get started with the show.
Hey there, this is everyone's favorite FBI agent, Chet, checking in on the Bleach Brothers Podcast, making sure that everyone is in accordance of being cleansed.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers Podcast. This is B-Word, and as usual, I am here with my good buddy Jake. Jake, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man. Just tired. I think we're at the point, B-Word, where I'm realizing I'm old.
How's that?
Like, my legs hurt all the time. Like,
Oh.
I mean, I have bad knees. I blew them out in sports, right? But like, my foot has been hurting for no reason now, and it reminded me of that Louis C.K. joke where he's like, I went to the doctor and said my ankle hurts, and the doctor's like, here, take some Aleve. I'm like, oh, is it going to fix it? He's like, no, you're just old. That's what you do now.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, it fucking hurts, and I just can't move right. I'm like exhausted. I took a nap before this show. I'm just going to be up front there. Like, I needed it today. I needed that recharge boost.
For the last week, I have taken naps right after work, and it's really fucking up my sleep schedule. I'm just going to be flat honest with you, because I am not a napper. Like, I don't nap. And so the fact that I actually do nap, like, I'm up all night long. So it's like 2 a.m. before I get to bed. It's rough, dude.
See, I used to not be a napper. I'm a napper now. But the problem is like, there's a threshold of how much nap you should have. So
Right.
like, the 10-minute nap sucks. Like, you feel like you slept 3 hours, but it's hard to get up, right?
Yeah.
But the over the hour nap is where, like, that's what happened. And I actually set an alarm to make sure I woke up for this show. And I'm one of those people, I'm a hard fucking sleeper.
Right.
That I apparently woke up, turned off the alarm, and rolled back over. And the reason I know that, my wife walked in and goes, when are you getting up? You turned your alarm off. Which means I just wasn't having it, dude. I just was not having it. I was over it. Which, I'm up, thank God. But, it's just one of those things, like, I'm hitting that point where I'm doing things differently.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, it's like your sleep schedule, right? You're trying to get in the rhythm of that. And I'm not hitting a rhythm, dude. I'm not hitting the perfect rhythm.
My cousin today posted something on social media that says that she doesn't remember how she was able to, like, go off of no sleep until like 3 a.m., partying all night, and then going to work at 8 o'clock. And I have to admit, dude, I'm right there. Like, as I've gotten older, my party schedule is like non-existent, right? Like, I'll go out and I'll have a couple drinks or whatever, and I'll stay out, but like, I'm home by 9. Like, this is the age that we're at, dude. And it's one of those things that I just feel like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we just kind of miss the ship, and I want the ship back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I call that the Taco Bell syndrome. It's the Taco Bell syndrome, B-word.
Like when you're supposed to get steak for a bachelor party?
No, not that.
Bell,
no,
like
that's
Taco Bell syndrome.
That's a different syndrome. That's a Caleb, or that's a Aaron shut your yap syndrome.
Yeah.
No, the Taco Bell syndrome is, you remember when you used to eat it and you didn't have to shit immediately?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, one point in your life happened where it's like, as soon as you eat it, you're like, this was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're old, right? That's the cycle of life right there. Is the minute Taco Bell makes you feel like you need to crap your pants, you realize you're old. Like I think that's really how it should be measured now.
There's a few things for me that kind of indicate that I'm getting older. And number one, I take a multivitamin every day. I think
Me too. Okay.
it's not a Flintstones.
Yeah, it's a big horse pill.
Yeah, it's a legit multivitamin. Number two, I think that the sleep schedule, like if I have 6 hours of sleep, it's great. If I have 8 hours of sleep, I'm done. Like I'm done for the next day. I might as well have just like slept in a weird position, right? The other thing about it is that I really have no tolerance for bullshit. And like, not that I'm a get off my lawn kind of guy, because I really try to be open and accepting and whatever for everybody's ideals and opinions. But at some point, I'm just done with that. Like at some point, I either tune you out or I'm just like, yeah, no, fuck off, fuck out of here. I don't want to deal with this. And I think as I've gotten older, not only have I gotten more crotchety, but I've also gotten more like creaky, I guess. Like things hurt that didn't used to hurt. Like hangovers, dude. Hangovers are. I told somebody who recently turned 30, I said, your hangovers will be entirely different from this moment forward. And she's like, no way. And I'm like, okay, fine. And sure as shit, she went out and celebrated her dirty 30. And she called me the next day and she's like, yeah, I don't like this. And I'm like, literally, it's once the clock strikes 30, you're done.
No, see, I was knocking on wood in the background because I've still never had one, and we know that B word.
Yep.
Never had a hangover in my life. But I treat it like I'll never forget when I worked at Nordstrom and I used to wear suits every day, right? And I felt like I was a good looking dude. Everybody be like, man, Jake, you can't eat that way. Like it's gonna catch up. And I'm like, you've seen my parents, they're small. I'm like, no, there's no way, man. I'm invincible. It's never gonna hit me. And now I'm like, fuck, I'm a balloon, dude, if I eat too much salt. It sucks. I agree with you about the bullshit thing though too, and I know this is hard to believe. I've actually gotten quieter over the years.
You have, and
actually, it doesn't seem like I know to fans and stuff. They're like, "Fuck you, Jake, you're the hater." Like, but like I really had. We were actually out with a friend who we had on before, and we will have on again. Travis Demers. We were out having lunch and golfing the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, like he goes, I saw people are calling you soft, like you're a soft Charmin hater now." And I said, yeah, he goes, or it's called just fucking growing up. And it was like a great statement to hear him say it because he's known me in the industry and stuff. And it was just, but it's true, man. I'm like you. It's like, I'm not get off your lawn. Like, I guess I'm the opposite of you. I've always been get off my lawn. But now it's like, I just sort of watch them on my lawn and just hope they fall.
I think that there's probably a better description there. I think almost you used to have them on your lawn. And then without trying to create a scene, you remove the lawn.
Yeah, no, that's it. Like, that's a perfect example. Like I got rid of the sod. Yep. I put just like it's like a pit where people will fall. Like, did you ever see the movie Monster House?
I have to be honest. Movie, but yeah, I fell asleep in Monster House because I used to do this thing where I'd take my kid to movies and then I'd fall asleep in them because they were animated. So
okay, well, essentially, I'm the old guy there where people just stay off my lawn because they're afraid of everything now. It's not it. Yeah, I've removed the lawn, so yeah.
I get it.
I don't know though, man. I like the same thing is though. I think I've also, and I'll admit this, I've also gotten quieter, B-word, because social media sucks.
Yep.
And I hate. I'm getting to the point where I hate being a card carrying member of the Facebook jail mafia, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I'm in it way too much.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys, we all have a joke behind the curtain the day I'm out. Like I usually am right back in because I go find like the most offensive thing possible the day I'm out and just post it. And then we all do the countdown. Like Jake's got 6 hours.
Yep. Well, so there's some celebrities that you didn't know, like actually shared a cell together. Like Jordan Belfort from The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
He actually wrote his life story at the beckoning of Tommy Chong because they were cellmates. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So I actually found out recently in your most recent stay in the Facebook jail that you were there with MySpace Tom, and we didn't realize that MySpace Tom was still around. So anyway, fun fact for everybody. But before we go down too far, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back.
Podcasts, there's plenty. From true crime to comedy, pop culture to politics. Hell, there's even plenty of D&D actual plays out there too. If there's a topic, there's an indie podcast for it. And that's where I step in. Welcome to Dungeons and Podcasts. At DMP, I take your favorite TTRPGs and your favorite indie podcasters, combine them together for everyone to enjoy. So come on, let's roll the dice.
Dungeons and Podcasts is available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, and Good Pods.
And welcome back into the Bleach Bros podcast. That was Cody,
Cody,
who we competed against. He won the podcast bracket challenge. I as a competitive guy, dude,
speaking of get off your lawn, fuck Don, right?
did not like Cody much. Like, I like Cody, don't get me wrong, but I did not like Cody in the moment of that whole bracket challenge thing. But happy to plug his podcast if you are a Dungeons and Dragons fanatic, or you like to play those types of table games. Give his podcast a shout, because he's putting out some content there. So we're going to talk today about some subjects, man, and I just want to preface this. We're going to talk potentially on some trigger warning stuff. And we're going to try not to get too political, because I don't believe that you or I are going to come from this in a political manner. This show has not really been a political show since we launched it. And so with that, we're going to try to keep that steady. We're going to try to keep that kosher there. But we are going to talk about some topics that do affect things like politics.
And we're going to piss people off. No.
I actually do think that there's probably going to be some people that are pissed off, which is why I did the trigger warning. But ultimately, man, I think that there's some things that we have to have a public discord. Like, there has to be conversation about these things. And so this week, you or a few weeks ago, you ended up sending me a video on Instagram of this guy who was talking to women about either expectations of women or expectations of men while they're dating or potentially getting married or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I kind of agree with what this guy's saying. And so I ended up looking him up, and you and I had a brief Discord about it. And you said, hey, let's talk about this guy in the next episode, because the guy has been banned from everything. And so we did a little bit of research going into this episode. And I think both of us can agree, we don't really like this guy. Like, this guy's kind of a puto.
Yeah. It's Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
And it's the epitome of, if I didn't do any research, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of his, but there were points he's made, like, in viral clips, right? Like, if you just watch, 2 minutes or 30 seconds or something, you're like, yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that point. Or, yeah, you got him, right? D's nuts. Yeah. Whatever. I think that has shown in society why our attention span is actually very fucking important.
Right.
It was very eye-opening to me, because I always felt I was on the other side of that banner. Like, I actually go do research and do this before I make an opinion and stuff. And I'm going to be flat out fucking honest right now. I was a fan of his based on those like 30-second clips. Like, I fucking agree with what he's saying right here.
Right.
And then I did research on the guy, and I'm like, holy fuck. I am so happy I actually went out and found some stuff out, because let's say I would have sent you that clip and we did the show that night, I would look like a total donkey dick right now. Like, in the sense, like, I would have been like, oh, dude, what he said was true. Like, fuck this. And like, I understand the masculinity behind it, because I mean, we did some posts like, what is toxic masculinity? How far can you go? What can you say? What is censorship like? And now that I do agree that men are less men-like based on the standards that we have, whether they're correct or not, it's true. However, his extremism on it bothers me.
He does take it to a level that I didn't anticipate. Let's put it that way. But I want to address some of the questions that we asked this week. So first and foremost, we talked about, how far is too far with internet censorship ultimately is kind of one of the topics, or what warrants being censored on the internet, or what warrants somebody being kicked off of a platform. And there's obviously a bunch of people that have been kicked off platforms, right? From former presidents to Andrew Tate to and we've got yeah, you're turning the fucking frogs gay. And so, we see that in society, and there's always the question, like, is a corporation limiting somebody's free speech? And free speech is not one of those things that's entitled all the way around the world. And when you have a company that has a presence in multiple countries, said company has to obey the laws of the land that they're in, right? So in China, it's like very regulated communication, right? Like
Right.
internet only has access to certain things. If you're posting anything against China or the government or whatever, I mean, that's probably, I mean, I don't know if you're going to get killed for it, but that's probably a potential outcome, right? So in the United States, we have this thing, free speech. But I think while free speech is free, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get punched in the mouth, right? Like we live in an internet society where people say anything just to get attention, or
Yeah,
people say
keyboard
anything.
cowboys, dude.
Yeah. But if they said it in person, like there'd be a lot more people knocked out than I think we realize, right?
Right.
And so, while we didn't I mean, we had some discord on the canceling or the removing of from social media. A lot of that kind of became a banter back and forth about Section 230 or whatever it is, and that really doesn't apply because that's more of an off topic from what we're talking about. But today we had a post that I thought was very thought provoking as far as the questions go. There were two questions. It says, "Are men allowed to be men?"
Mm-hmm.
And the second question is, "At what point does being a man become toxic?" And we actually had some pretty good discord on that today. And I want to read through some of these comments. A friend of the show, Brandon Sprague, he actually commented on our Instagram, said, depends on definition of masculinity. I would say it crosses a line when it belittles another man, or someone feels it's uncomfortable, or intrudes on how a woman feels by your language. And I think that that's a very well put way. I mean, I think that anything is toxic if you're coming across in belittling somebody. Would you agree with that?
I do. And so, and I totally agree with his statement. I mean, the sense is like, I think that again, we look at it in the wrong light. So like
Right.
Gillette was having commercials, right? And all of a sudden they're like against toxic masculinity or something, right? And of course everybody's up in arms because, just God forbid we get mad at a syrup bottle or something, right? Else. But it's the point that like, yeah, if you're being narcissistic and belittling to people and talking down to them and catcalling or whatever trait you're bringing in that's to make your self seem over alpha male like,
Right.
that's where the problem's drawn. Because I mean, like if you look at, for an example, B, where we're both dads, right? And I'm sure we're different than our own fathers were.
Yeah.
And for good and bad. I mean, like for me, like I say I love you to my children a lot. I embrace them. I hug them. I kiss them. I didn't really have that a lot. And it doesn't make me less manly. And I'm also saying, I don't think that my father was totally wrong for the way he was either. There's generations you're raised in and stuff. But I think that we see words, right? Like toxic masculinity, and we automatically get to the defensive on either
Right.
side, like defensive,
Right.
like, oh, they're fucking wrong, or oh, you're wrong because I can be a man still. So like when we ask the question, can men still be men? Yes, but also be your own man, I guess, in the way that you want to be.
I think that there's also a factor that we're not really taking in it for our generation specifically. You look at the 90s, right? The mid 90s through the early 2000s with the internet boom. So many things became public on the internet, whether you wanted to or not, good or bad. And so you look at things like, as an example, when Donald Trump was running for president the first time, he was talking to Billy Bush on Entertainment Tonight or whatever the show was, and he says, "You just grab the women by the pussy," right?
Mhm.
Now, is that something that I've not heard in a locker room? No, dude. I mean, we heard language like that all the time in a locker room. I don't think that that's the question. I think the question was, is it appropriate? And if
Yeah.
you're electing somebody to act on behalf of the integrity of a country, is that appropriate? Now, there's obviously a lot of discord and a lot of discussion that can happen with that, good, bad, and indifferent. And we're not going to go down that road tonight. But to say that there's only one person that has that type of conversation or another person that has that type of conversation, and that's where it's isolated, I think is a farce. Because for generations, people have talked like that within the masculinity crowd, if that makes sense. And so I
Yeah.
do think that you can be a man, you can hold manly values, but I also think that there are lines that you shouldn't cross. I'm not going to say that you can't cross. I'm saying that you shouldn't cross. You shouldn't be talking about another person's spouse or significant other. You shouldn't be talking about somebody's children. You shouldn't be belittling somebody. But I also do think that as a man, you also need to be able to stand up for what you believe in, right? And I think that often, if you have a dissenting opinion on one thing or another, you're quieted down in a public forum. And that's where I think that a lot of men have a hard time feeling like they're being able to be a man. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because also, I mean, let's just be honest here. The elephant in the room here, we've politicized everything in our life.
Right.
It's a right versus left problem almost every time now. I mean, it used to be, you know, there were problems, and it could be, you know, a men versus woman problem or stuff like that. Not that those don't exist, but everything has turned into a right versus left essentially. And so that's where the defensive thing comes of this side's right, no, that side's right. And the funny thing is almost all of us are in the fucking middle. And
Right.
it feels like more and more we're being pushed one way or another just because we're getting pissed off.
Right. And that kind of brings me to McShane's comment from Whiskey Hell Podcast today on our Twitter. He says, one person's masculinity is another's toxicity. Couldn't tell you as far as the answer to our question. It's a crapshoot, a totally moving target that changes based on the people one is around. The time of day, weather conditions, moon cycle, hungry or not, etc., and so on. It's tiresome. And then we had one additional comment on that too that says it seems that these days you have to be part woman to be a man. The way people have just labeled everything a man does is either misogynistic or toxic, or it's mansplaining, even if we are right. And I think that that's where the misconception is in society, that we as men need to be able to act so we don't feel that way, but we also shouldn't rush to justifying it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to mansplain during all this, so I hope all the women listening understand what the fuck I'm saying right now. I'm just
exactly,
but no, it's like that's where also the term a time and a place comes into it. And I'm not defending people saying that you can do this in the locker room and it's appropriate. However, there has always been a time and a place for certain things that you do. I've worked construction. I work in a kitchen. We say fuck and cunt a lot in the back of house. We always have. Does it mean I need to take it everywhere else in my career that is still involving, you know, kitchens and stuff? No.
Right.
Time and place.
Right.
Does it make me a better person or a worse person for doing that? Yes and no, depending on the person, as we're saying, right? The same thing with toxic masculinity. I think we need to take a step back and go, stop defining what a man is by having to have all of these traits. A man can be a man without some of those traits. And I think that's where the toxic masculinity thing comes into, is that it has to fit in a neat box for either party. It either has to fit in a neat box where you're more womanly, or it has to fit in a neat box where you're fucking Jesse the Body Ventura on The Predator, calling people a bunch of, you know, slack-jawed pride faggots and saying, you know, you're a sexual tyrannosaurus with chew in your mouth. Like it's not neither here nor there.
Right.
It is a how somebody is how they can perceive it. Stop perceiving that you have to be one way, and stop perceiving that you have to argue against the other side to prove yourself right or wrong all the damn time. And I think that was Andrew Tate's problem, is he was taking it to this extreme, saying, I'm a man. You have to be a man. If your wife or girlfriend has an OnlyFans, she is your property. She owes you money for that. Where the fuck is that getting off?
Right.
Like when he's giving the speech to those women saying, what are you doing with your life? Now, when he was saying, like, essentially to break it down, he was in a room, and I'm going to say probably 12 women, B-word, would you say?
Something around there,
and
yeah.
I don't know if it was a podcast or radio show, but they were asking him how he felt about women that don't get married and have children. Now, I agreed with a lot of points on the sense of, like, yes, I think having children is one of the greatest things on the planet. Yes, I think thoughts, and I mean THOT, you know, the hose, eventually are going to get old and not have the same life. And if your whole life is to travel and do that, I'm not the one to tell you that. But if that's what you're putting value in and you don't get value out of it later, you might be sad and alone when you're alive. That is true. They might hit 50 and go, shit, I should have had kids. They might not, though, too. And you can't have that perception to tell them they're wrong by not having children and not creating life and not doing the same things you do. Everybody on this planet should not live the same fucking way. If it would, it'd be fucking boring, and or all of us would be slaves because we wouldn't do it right.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that while while he made some points in there that I agree with, it comes back to two sayings that I've heard throughout my life. A broken clock is right twice a day, and the dog shines, or the sun shines on a dog's ass occasionally, right? And so while I agree with portions of what he said, or parts of what he's publicized, um, it's the shadows behind the camera that I disagree with. And it ends up becoming, is this really the pulpit that we want to preach this out of, through this guy's mouthpiece? And I don't like having shitty people talk on my behalf. And so, that's where I really struggle with Andrew Tate. Do I think he should be kicked off of the internet? I kind of have an issue with internet censorship. I feel like, for I guess for lack of a definition, I feel like there's a lot of bitches out there. There's a lot of Karens out there. And for those that are listening to this, I didn't call Karen, your next door neighbor, a bitch. They're just one and the same as far as a metaphor. But I do think that people have to be able to tolerate people who see things differently. And I feel like that is a huge issue in society. There's no discord anymore. It's they're bad or they're bad, and we're going to avoid them or sabotage them or cancel them. And that's the rush to judgment. I look back at some people who have been canceled for things that they've said, or some people who have been on radio or on video or whatever, who have said something that was appropriate in the timeline as far as like socially acceptable, but it's not socially acceptable today. And I do think that we have to give sometimes those people some grace, just because it was a different time. Like, is it wrong? Sure. But in that time frame, it was acceptable. And that's like, going back to different things that were unacceptable then and are acceptable now. I think society has changed a lot in the last 40 years for the good. I think that there's a lot of good changes that have happened with society. I think, however, that there's a lot of bad changes that have happened with society. Namely, I think cancel culture is just a stupid thing. I agree that there are people who don't deserve the microphone, but just unplugging all the microphones, I don't know, is the solution. I believe that people have the opportunity just to tune it out or to not listen to it.
Well, see, and I agree with you, because I mean, you were making a point of like socially acceptable at the time. Like we've talked about this to big links. Ari Gold couldn't exist in a new show.
Right.
If you did Entourage now,
Right.
It wouldn't exist. I mean, that's almost the epitome of toxic masculinity, and even actually not as well, because he's actually, you look at it, he's just a boisterous, overspoken cunt bag. I mean, if there's a better way to put it. But I've told you this before. I think the biggest downfall was the block button. Yeah. I don't think people should be kicked off. I think that there should be open forums and freedom of speech. Mind you, I love Bald Eagle Freedom Party America. I am so happy to be a citizen of this country because I have the freedom to talk. I get pissed off because I get put in Facebook jail and stuff. And mind you, I also do it to provoke the bear. It's not that I'm actually trying to put out like false information and really trying to ruin people's life. But the other problem is, B-word, because as time and place goes, usually when I'm in trouble is when I'm in a private group with friends that are all of the same mindset. We're making jokes.
Right.
That's where I have a problem. Andrew Tate, in my opinion, should be canceled. No. I think most people shouldn't be. And I know a lot of people might give me flack for that. But the reason is because he's in the news right now, heavily. And like I said, I was watching videos and stuff, and I was enjoying some parts. But the more I did research on him and went out and actually looked, I found out more. If you were to cancel everything about him and take it all off there, I would never know. And I might have only agreed with those 30-second clips and done that. And as I said, the block button is bad because what has happened is people now follow and listen to all people like themselves.
Right.
Society has become so narcissistic in the sense of self-centeredness of being like, I like this. I'm only going to follow people that like bananas like me. If you don't like bananas, you're wrong. Argue with me. The art of debate has gone. Right. And that is, I think, why we have fans on this show, is me and you do banter back and forth. We get along for the most part, but there are times that we will disagree. We just had another great fan who went through our whole back catalog, and he was saying how he loved the everlasting segments that we do. And the main reason is because for us to justify the reasons that we find each other wrong or right or what we like.
Right.
And that is an art of debate. Now, mind you, this is a very pop culture, easy topic to do. We're not sitting here talking about politics. I mean, we're getting a little heavy tonight. We've done that before. However, though, we're not in a sense where me and you, if we disagree, we can't have a discussion. It's not just because we're friends. We've had guests on the show, or if you don't agree with them, we can have that discussion. And that is lost.
I agree, and I think that I have a buddy of mine, Carlos. He's a friend of ours. He's actually the creator of Sal the Salty Hippo. He's done all of our digital work for Sal, and Carlos and I do not see eye to eye politically in any way, shape, or form at all. But we make it a point to actually talk politics. Like, he's one of the people that I will talk politics with because we're so different. But we also talk politics because we can agree at the end to disagree. And I think that is so very important, that we have dialogue in this country, that we're able to actually accept the other person, even though they believe something entirely different than us, because it's their right to do so. And in turn, we appreciate each other.
Well, see, I have the same thing. Like, so I have Ben that we've talked about on the show. He's a big fan of our show too. But me and him have Jake and Ben Day, where we go to every Marvel movie and everything together. And we are very similar people, tall, big guys, enjoy nerd shit. But when it comes to political debates, we could not be further on the opposite. But the difference is, he's such a good friend where all I do is poke the bear all day. I mean, everybody that knows me knows that's what I do. And I will just try to piss you off for a second just to have fun and discord. Now, the thing is, if we have I can also have a serious conversation if you really wanted to. But the thing is, me and him go back and forth on it. And it's great. It's one of those things, like, that's how we debate on it, is we just pretty much make fun of each other. It's almost like meme politically. Like, it's just, we're sending stuff to each other just to piss each other off. And I think it does get heated, but it also has opened us up to some of the best conversations I've ever have. Now, if I was just to shut them off and go, "You're not my friend anymore, you don't agree with me," blocked, I would never learn more about that side or have an appreciation for that side. And I think if we could circle this back to where people get toxic masculinity wrong, is because they shut down instantly, as I said, on the defensive. As soon as you say, they're going to change Gillette commercials because they're too toxic, or, they have too much toxic masculinity, you're like, what the hell? They're just razors. They're for men anyways. It's like, well, did you hear why? Did you hear what they're doing? Do you hear? Also, companies all over the damn world do stuff like that to create dollars. Coca-Cola is the number one investor in the world for fresh water.
Yeah.
Do you know why? They will go out of business without it. 2, they have to donate to it to look better. Hershey's chocolate, I don't know if you know this, B-word, is the number one investor for children of obesity and diabetes.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they give people a lot of obesity and diabetes. You have to counteract yourself. I don't know. It just, I know that we were going to talk more about Andrew Tate, but I don't know. It's hard to talk about him and not get into just what actually envelops around him, and just the whole situation of where we're going. I think it's eye-opening and poignant to actually look at these things.
I think you made a great point, though, when you were talking about companies that invest in things that don't necessarily meet their bottom line. I think you made great points with Hershey's and Coca-Cola, as far as they're doing something that I wouldn't say is charitable, but does give back in a way that helps society, if that makes sense. But you can also look at companies like Purdue Pharma that manufactured OxyContin, and they were actually creating their own line of rehabs, but they're still pushing OxyContin and rewarding doctors for giving out OxyContin. So in that sort of scenario, that's not really the kind of charitable or giving back that we're talking about here. So there are misconceptions on both sides. But going back to this, I think that with masculinity, like my masculinity, so first and foremost, I consider myself to be a man. Like, maybe I'm simple, but I have a penis, and I like man stuff. I grew up with Hot Wheels. I grew up with WWE and WCW and playing sports, and I still love sports, and I love race cars, and I like fast things, and I like things that are dangerous, right? And so part of that is masculinity, but part of that is just human interest, right? Like there's a lot of women out there who share those same qualities. Maybe not the penis, maybe the penis, who knows? But long story short, masculinity to me has actually evolved as I've gotten older. Like we started the show talking about getting older.
Mm-hmm.
Masculinity to me means understanding my feelings and being able to rationalize those feelings and being able to treat somebody in a respectful way, even though I may not be feeling that I want to do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that masculinity? Maybe, maybe not. But to me, as a man, that's what I feel like I need to do. It is my job to treat people how I want to be treated. It is was my job to raise a daughter who I wanted her to be respectable, but I also wanted her to know what respect is. And I wanted her to know how it is to be treated by a man. I felt like I needed to instill those things. I felt like as a man, I can't be stagnant. I need to do something to move forward. We're doing this podcast as a hobby. It would be nice that if this would grow and become something, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's still something where I feel like we're moving forward. I'm going to school. I'm getting ready to graduate this year. Like there are things that I still need to do to evolve and become who I want to be and do these things that I want to do. And for me, without masculinity, quote, air quotes, I don't know that I would have actually been able to go through that, because I feel like if I didn't identify as a masculine person, and this isn't a judgment against any women, that I wouldn't have gotten the strength or the gall to actually get up and challenge myself. And that doesn't mean that women can't challenge themselves with their femininity or if they choose masculinity or whatever. But what that does mean is that was my driving force in trying to be the best that I could be. Masculinity has evolved over the course of my lifetime to me. Has it evolved at all to you?
Yeah, because I was going to say, you made some good points, and before I start, there's nothing simple about your penis. But I mean, you defined your own masculinity, which the nice part about it is, B-word, it's an undefinably definable trait.
Right.
And because mine would be the same, like, you know what I mean? I'm a man. I have a penis. I like women. And not but that's for me, right? It's my definable trait that's undefinable, but still you can put things in there in the bucket that we have the same, like, right? We like WWE, we like this, but like I have a bright pink Discover credit card. I love the color pink. I always have. For some guys, for some reason, that's a problem. And it's funny to me when that becomes a topic of contention. When I've been out and paid for the bill, like, what do you got a pink card? It's like, yeah, I like why? I just like the color pink. And of course, then I might make a vagina joke and whatever. It all goes downhill. And most of the time it's just razzing each other, right? But as I said, it's an definable trait. And as you said, it's grown and evolved. We can look at the good in this situation too, where if toxic masculinity was never brought up, would men become better? No.
Yeah.
Would women become better? No. And the point is that we have learned that it is good to be emotional with your children. It is good to care about women. It is good to have them have good jobs. The problem that society has in a whole is forcible contradiction.
Yes.
And what that means is when you forcibly change things and when you forcibly make things happen and make people be on the defensive, whether they're doing research or not, or agree with it or not, when you're doing situations, again, going back to the point when we were talking about like Purdue Pharma and those companies, when companies and corporations and politics and stuff force actions on people that say there's a trait out there that is a problem, we need to forcibly handle it. That's where it becomes disingenuous. That's where you get people pissed off. That's where you don't get change and you get change in the wrong direction, because all that's happening is now it feels like, oh, we just don't want men to be men, so let's fucking change it.
I completely agree with that. And we, you and I are not that everything in our podcast needs to be about comic books, but you and I are huge comic book fans. And I'm not talking movies, I'm talking comic books. And there is a lot in the comic books that embraces diversity. Mm-hmm. And this is from back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the whole works, right? Like you have the Bronze Age of comics where it was very much like societal roles, right? And then as society evolved, so did the storylines and the characters within comic books. And so as we're seeing that more of these diverse characters are hitting the screen, like She-Hulk or Miss Marvel or whatever, or even Moon Knight because of his
Mental
diagnoses,
illness, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're seeing that people just don't like it. They just don't identify with it, and they're ready to throw it away. Well, that's fine as a consumer. If you're a subscriber for Disney Plus and you don't want to watch these shows, that's totally fine. But for you to go out and like try to sabotage it, like that's just stupid. That's a lot of effort. You're actually doing a lot of effort to try to like cancel something.
Well, like I'll be honest. That's why I think the worst hero ever, Superman, is one of the most favorited. You know why? It's easy white bread to digest, and what I mean by that is that it's the most simplistic way to look at a character. Okay, there's really no diversity there. I mean,
Right.
if you really break Superman down, he has almost every power. He is good looking. He's a straight, I mean, he was a straight white male, right? Essentially, I mean, you have that, right? You have the cookie cutter aspect that is easily digestible for almost every fan to get behind.
Right.
And it's not saying black heroes aren't great or anything like that, but if we look at corporations and society, that is usually the consumer base, okay, of what it goes down easiest. It is not correct, but as you're saying, like I love She-Hulk. It's getting review bombed, and then there are people that don't like it. The funny thing is, though, the people I've seen arguing, the keyboard cowboys and the chat room Romeos and stuff that are out there that would probably be punched in the face by what they're saying, is in that crowd that pisses me off of toxic masculinity. Going, well, this isn't. It's like, and they don't even really know anything about the fucking character.
Right.
There are things that have changed that I don't like. Okay. Like my wife was trying to watch it with me, which my wife's like, I'm not a fan. And I said, oh, why? She goes, I don't know. I just don't really, it's not interesting to me. But she kept going like, oh, is that how it happens in the comics? No, yes, and no, and I was going back and forth. And it doesn't need to be exact continuity. But like, I'm a big fan of Mr. H reviews, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about that on the show today.
Yeah.
Or before. And, his YouTube. But I feel like he's in that party of he's just shitting on it to shit on it now because his fans like that. And to be upfront, I never want to become that show, no matter how big we get, B-word,
right,
where we just say something because the fans will agree with it or they'll appreciate it. Like if let's say we were bigger than we are right now, B-word, and we were going to record this show, and we're like, yeah, but because we know the demographics of our show, and we were like, hey, we can't say that because 90% of our audience are white males in their 30s. Like, who fucking cares? Just say what you're saying. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with his show is he's been hating on the show and for various reasons. There's reasons he really doesn't like it. That's fine. But for the aspects of that, I don't agree with.
I think that monetizing and viralization of social media has also become an issue as well. Because I feel like so as an example, and I'm shameless plug here, we have a Patreon, right? And we have subscribers for our Patreon. I want to put out good content for our patrons so that way they continue to subscribe to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the same way on the internet. If you're a YouTube channel or if you're a podcast or if you're whatever, you want to continue to drive your base, right? That's what we hear in politics right now. Oh, they're just driving their base. Well, driving their base is fine, but I do think that there's a point where if all you're doing is just trying to drive your base, you're operating within an echo chamber, regardless of the topic. You're operating in an echo chamber. And then the viralization. I mean, when things go viral, it doesn't mean that it's viral for a good reason, right? Like you can have news that is actual news that one side tries to take for them and the other side tries to push away onto the other. And again, not that we're getting into politics here, but as an example, Mark Zuckerberg, your favorite guy, went on the Joe Rogan Experience and he was talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, right? And the FBI came to him and said, hey, watch out for Russian disinformation. And everybody knows what happened in 2016 when you had, interference with the election and all the blah, 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 right? The problem is that news sources that are trusted, they unethically didn't allow a story to be shared or consumed through social media, and they didn't report on it. 2 years later, or however long it's been now, they're finding out that it was a completely true story. Now, let's take the story and put that off to the side and take all the politics out of it. How can we trust the media moving forward if they're willing to shield things from us? How can we trust social media and their fact checkers if they're willing to shield things from us? How can we trust our politicians if they're saying, well, this person is bad, but they're equally doing the same thing, right? And I'm not speaking about any one politician or any one news organization, but I am talking from an ethical perspective. These are the same societal pinpoints that are telling us we're either toxic males or we're soft,
Mhm.
right? And so it's a really hard thing as a man to try to juggle that. And how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, I'll go back to a point you were making about viralization and all that, right? Like, it's funny to bring it back full circle. Andrew Tate got viralized, and
Yeah.
that's what also led to his cancelization, right? Which also, the funny thing is, after being canceled, made him more viral again.
Yes.
I mean, you probably never would have heard of him besides me bringing him up if he doesn't get canceled, correct?
Right. Same thing. Yeah.
And so you look at it like, man, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can go out and get automated. You can go and get viralized. You can go search for things, but whether it's good or bad, it can still blow up.
Right.
And so like he became huge because what he was saying, because I guess he's running a school and it's to teach men how to be men. And, I've never taken the class. I can't say if I agree with it or not. I know that's where he's making money. He was a kickboxer and stuff like that. But it's a sense that even when you try to cancel or redact or anything, they still can become big. And that's a problem.
I totally agree with that. There are two instances that are very similar. So more recently, Jordan Peterson is a professor out of Toronto University. A lot of people want to call him conservative. I think in some manners he's conservative, but I think in some manners he's very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
He talks a lot about some issues that are hot button issues like gender identity and biology, and some things like that when it comes into people transitioning and being in sports and whatever and so forth. He's a huge male advocate. And I'm not talking about that he just goes to bat for men, period. He talks a lot about men needing to be appreciated and needing to be able to deal with the things that they're being dealt with in society. For a long time, men have been told, you need to man up. You can't feel. You need to do
Rub
this.
dirt
You
on
can't
it. Get
cry.
up. Knock it off.
Absolutely. And he goes and he debunks those amongst other topics that he talks about. And he too has been on the opposite side of cancel culture, where he's been touring through universities and campuses, and these universities and campuses will not allow him on their property. They won't allow him to talk to the students. And I think that that's a problem, especially with universities where you embrace education. I think education is public discord. I think you have to be able to have arguments and discussions and counterpoints to be able to justify why a topic is that way. In science, you come up with a hypothesis and then you do testing, and then you do more testing, and then you do more testing, and then ultimately the goal is to find a result, right?
Unless you're a flat earther, but yeah.
Correct. But that testing is ultimately to try to challenge the point being made. And if you believe that whatever somebody is saying is incorrect, then challenge the point, have a discussion. But it doesn't mean that you cancel that person because they very well may be spitting the truth. But to go back to another thing, this is right after I got divorced. This is 2000, I don't know, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. VH1 had a television show, and I remember watching it because I thought, wow, this is ridiculous. And it was called The Hookup Artist. Or the Pickup Artist, or the Hookup Artist, or whatever, where they were teaching men how to pick up women.
Yeah.
That was a toxic man. That was bad. Like, they were teaching men how to manipulate women, and I didn't like that at all. So I do think it goes in a balance that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were so let's go back to really quick though. You were talking about media, right, B-word, and shielding us of real stories, right? However, how dangerous do you think misinformation is? And that goes back to the censorship thing. Where do you draw the line? Because do you feel that if somebody's out there spouting like Alex Jones, as we've talked about, right, has a lot of misinformation, whether you believe it or not, because do you trust, and I'm not, standing up for the media here, but we all like to think that we're the greatest driver in the world and everybody else is stupider than us and we're the best, right?
Mhm.
How well do you trust society to go out and actually do research behind things? And so do you think censorship is needed for that, and that we do need to be coddled and sheltered? That's the problem, right? Because we're like, no, you can't give us misinformation, because what if the people don't do the research themselves? So you have to like put out the real stuff. But then also you have to shelter them, right? So where do you draw the line with that, B-word, and how do you feel?
I feel just like Aaron off of I Had to Say It. Let's remove the warning labels off of things and see what happens. I think that there's a
Thanos was right, yeah.
you know, here's my get off my lawn moment, right? I think that people have to, like, okay, so we're parents, right? So
Mhm.
we've taken our children, and as they've made a mistake, what have we done? Have we berated them and told them that they're a subhuman and that they shouldn't exist? No, we say, you made a mistake, here's how you move forward, right? In whatever manner we're communicating that. Do they just make the one mistake? No, dude. I still make mistakes to this day. You make a mistake, you figure out what you did wrong, and hopefully you make a better decision. And ultimately, I think that when it comes to society trying to regulate misinformation, I believe some of this needs to be consumed to be proven wrong.
Exactly. That is exactly how I feel. And the reason is I was in first grade, and we had a friend growing up named Ricky McClellan.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember him, biggest
I
Bills
remember
fan I ever
Ricky.
met in my life. But we were eating lunch at the time in Pahrumpo. I think it was the primary school, and it became Mance Elementary, but at the time it was primary. And we're in first grade, and we're all at the lunch table. And I believe that Jaws was a real shark, because I'm in
Right.
first grade. You know, I've watched the movie. I'm 5.5 years old. That is a real shark, and it's dangerous and scary. And I'll never forget him arguing with me until I went home and asked my dad. And my dad's like, yeah, of course it's fake. And that proves the point, B-word, that sometimes you need misinformation out there to open up dialogue, to open up debating, to make people learn. How many times have you been in a room with somebody who've watched, like, you know, anybody, and I'll throw Alex Jones out, for example, that's like, man, did you hear that rainbows are falling on people's heads and making them feel bad? And it's like, no, dude, that's a fake news article. And then you go and find it. That's, I think, where Zuckerberg tried to have it right. He was trying to create the Chicken Little society, if you were, of we're going to have the people go out and prove the sky's not falling when all these people are on our website saying the sky's falling. Where they had a problem, B-word, is how do you actually control that in a society that has bots and monetization and viralization and all those problems that we're talking about, and then that much arguing on top of it, and nobody's ever going to be wrong. Nobody's ever wrong.
Right. And well, the problem is that when you have society who holds multiple computers in their hands, whether it be cell phones or iPads or whatever, they create content damn near all day long, right? Whether it's published or not, they're creating content. So whoever the fact checker is, whoever the moderators are, there are not enough of them to try to regulate all of that. I remember when YouTube had one full day of content. You could consume 24 hours of content. Now, there are days, if not weeks, of content uploaded every single day to the platform. There is so much content that is out there, it's hard to try to identify what is real and what is fake. And if you're spending all of your time trying to silence those that you disagree with, I think you're going to find out that you're going to end up silencing some true things that are out there. And I think it's going to be a detriment to society. And I feel like as we sit here and try to put labels on everything like racist or toxic masculinity or white privilege or you know whatever these things are that we hear often in society, I think that there's points to all of those things, but I don't think that as a general label that you can just place on somebody's forehead to identify them to all of society, that is a good thing. I think that is a detriment to society, and I think that there should be public discord.
I agree. And I guess I'll close out on this part, B-word. And I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard it from an older gentleman one time. You know those moments in life, like when you're at a coffee shop or a poker table or something, and somebody says something very insightful to you that's very wise, and you listen to that old person that you're looking over, going, "Man, you've seen it, you've been through years." Like, and he just goes, this guy was like babbling on about something and like talking all this farce nonsense, right? Like what he believed in and everything. He walked away, and the old guy looks over at me, and he goes, "Always let the idiots talk."
Yep.
And I went, why? He goes, they will do a few things. One, you will know they're an idiot. Two,
Yep.
they will find a way to eventually talk themselves into a hole, whether that means they've proven themselves wrong, been caught in a lie, or people eventually just stop listening. And so I think that has been lost is let the idiots talk. Because the more, if you would let Andrew Tate talk, like I said, the more videos we watched on him and found out, the more I was like, holy shit, fuck this guy. I
Yeah.
let the idiot talk. I listened to him longer and I realized this guy is full of shit. There is nothing redeemable about this. There were good points made and some great viral moments, but I let the idiot talk. And if I would have silenced him, as I said in the beginning of the show, I probably would have been like, he's great.
Yep.
But let the idiot talk.
I 100% agree with you, which is why I allow you to talk on this platform.
I knew. See, I knew that joke was coming.
I feel like if I don't let you talk, number one, we might not be friends after a long time, and number two, then I'm just going to silence you, and people are going to realize that you're wrong, or that they're going to think that you're not wrong ever. And,
mumble on those words, boo boo. You're afraid now, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, man, we don't typically talk about societal things like this, this in depth, and I actually appreciate the dialogue that we had tonight. I hope our audience does too. And again, I want to reiterate to everybody that's out there, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have an alternative opinion from somebody else. I think the part that's hard in society is that we have a quick trigger to try to silence people or cancel people, and that just doesn't do any service. That I think that creates more of a spotlight, and it does the complete opposite. So with that, man, a couple shout outs that I want to have on here. Thanks again for all of our Patreon subscribers. I hope that you're enjoying the new content that's coming out. And I want to give a genuine shout out to the Happy Hour podcast that we've had on our show. They ended up making they made it just over 40 hours straight in the podcasting world. They ended up getting a record of the longest podcast consecutive, and we were happy to be a part of that. So Mike, Tabby, Caleb, congratulations, guys.
Gunner. Don't forget Gunner.
Oh, El Presidente.
That's right.
And with that, let's actually hear from El Presidente. And so, Gunner, what do you got for me?
Thanks for the dirt talk. Come back and get sanitized.